I'm Yogi Roth, not joined by Ashley Adamson. Fired up to be with you, though. Welcome if you're checking out this YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, share it with somebody. Subscribe. Let us know what you're thinking below as we dive into this week's College Football Playoff Rankings. I love this night, presented by Dr. Pepper. Ashley Adamson not with us, so you just got me tonight. We're going solo, but we will dive into all the things that we think truly matter when we're talking about our teams out west in the college football playoff rankings. So to get to the news, in case you missed it, we're looking at UW at 5, sitting pretty where they are. I got issues with it. I'll let you know what they are in a minute. Oregon right behind them at 6, the highest one-loss team, which is good for the Ducks. They sit still. Oregon State, they go to number 11. You know what is going on in Corvallis this week, and we'll break that one down in a minute. Arizona, how about that? Climbing up the rankings. Cannot wait to get to Tucson. And they have a top 25 game against Utah, who sits at 22. So that's kind of where we are. A couple of my issues that I'll break down as we get going into this YouTube live stream. Florida State, a little frustrated with where they sit and where Louisville sits, because I think right now the ACC, for whatever reason, is gaining and garnering a little bit more respect than the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is lauded by anybody who watches college football as the strongest league in the country. The numbers would back that up, top to bottom. The ranked teams would back that up, top to bottom. But the number one team coming out of the West right now, at least you look at the rankings, is sitting behind a team that has a challenging game this weekend against North Alabama. So in case you haven't put that one up on your DVR, make sure you lock that in. That was frustrating. The other one to me is Iowa and Arizona. Don't really get that. Iowa not scoring a lot of points. I think their highest scoring game this year was 31 points. Arizona hasn't lost by a combined 31 points all season long. So sit with that one as we break it all down. I want to give you the strength of the league, though, just to back it up. I don't want to be one of those guys up here that just says it's the strongest league in the country and the numbers don't back it up. So how about this? We're looking at, I just showed you those 5 teams in the CFP. That's, I believe, the second highest among any conference. The only conference that you look at this rankings in the AP, for whatever it's worth, 3 in the top 10. To me, I go into the non-conference play. The record is pretty impressive. The winning percentage is 8.829. That's pretty high. It's actually the best among all of the FBS conferences. SEC sitting below that. So I'm here for the conference debate, but I don't think it's much of one. And we've had to push over the course of many years, but the way last year finished, the way this year began with hype, and the way the reality is right now, the Pac-12 is sitting in a great spot. I think if you're wondering, like, is the Pac-12 going to get boxed out? No, I don't believe so. I think we all know the SEC champ's going to be in. We know a Big Ten champ is going to be in. The 2 teams ranked right now at the top of the Big Ten, they obviously play each other. Michigan has played one ranked team all season. You go to Maryland, who has a losing record in conference play. I'm sure that'll be fun. Our buddy Matt Leinart will be out there. Enjoy that one, man. But there's some fun games out west that I think can have a lot to do with this CFP race. I think the Pac-12 champ is in. The Big 12 champ will be interesting to see how that thing shakes out, because if Texas, we assume they're in, they're going to play possibly Oklahoma State, where they sit right now. We'll see what the strength of that win does. We know that Texas is a huge win over Bama, but I think the Pac-12, when you look at where it sits today, if things remain as is and it's UW Oregon, then the winner's in. Then it's all about the placement of that. You also might be asking, well, how many teams could get in? Like, what is the scenarios? Well, I've talked to Jim Thornby, who runs all things Pac-12 communications and is the guru of all tiebreakers. And yes, he hasn't slept all week because he's been working and sorting through all those tiebreakers. And I've been told there's 512 possible options. So yeah, sit with that. We'll get into that right before we let you go and tell you, kind of lay out what the weekend is. But I want to get into the teams. Let's talk about Washington right now. Right now, it's important for you to know they're undefeated. And I say that because the last team that was undefeated at this stage of the game was Oregon in 2012. They were 10-0. You know what happened the week after? Well, if you live in Stanford, California, you do, because Stanford beat them. And if you're in Corvallis, you're probably rooting for that, because that is the matchup that we have this weekend against Oregon State. Now, look, this has never happened before, a team being undefeated. And I think it needs to be circled. That's why I'm kind of frustrated to see where UW sits behind Florida State. I mean, what are we talking about when you look at the strength of the teams they have beaten and how they have beaten them? Here's just a nugget for you. Oregon, USC, and Utah, what do they have in common? They're not really scoring against UW. In fact, they have a combined 7 points in the fourth quarter against Washington. So I think there's easy and I would call lazy skepticism on Washington. Say, well, what do they do on defense? Well, they're better than you think on defense. We know what they are on offense, one of the best teams in the country. Michael Penix Jr., as a Heisman voter, he's easily on my ballot, probably on yours, one of the leading guys to possibly do that. He's thrown for 300 yards in 8 of 10 games this season, already 28 touchdowns. Now, they have a tough one on Saturday. If you've ever been to Corvallis, I was there twice on the USC staff when we lost. It is a challenging place. It's going to be bonkers. We know the reality around the Pac-12. We know what's going on with Oregon State, or what we presume to be going on in the future with Oregon State and UW going to 2 different conferences. So the Beavs will be juiced up for this one. And the Beavs are 8-2. First time since 2012. They've won 9 straight home games. Look out. Get the chainsaw out. I wish we were going there, but I know our buddies Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler, and Holly Rowe will be there. You are in for an absolute treat. I think this game is going to come right down to the end. Now, let's talk about why am I still frustrated about where Florida State sits. Well, I just think the conference hasn't done much. You look at even this past weekend. Okay, I get it. Rivalry game against Miami, a nice win. I'll give you that. But I think when you look at what they've done and who they've beaten, and compare to what Washington has done and who they've beaten them and where they've beaten them, I just think you have to put them, and I think it's a relatively easy argument to put UW today ahead of Florida State. If they win this weekend, and I referenced earlier the big battle that my good buddy Mike Norvell has this weekend against North Alabama, I think you can see Oregon rise up. And if they do win, to UW fans, if you haven't already, book your flight to Vegas because they lock it in if they get a win. Let's talk about the Oregon Ducks. They go down to Arizona State. Everybody remember where they were when Jane Daniels threw that beautiful pass to Brandon Ayuk? I remember that. And they took down a team that was on their way potentially to the playoff this very week a couple years ago. It is going to be a fun environment because Arizona State, the one thing they do, and this team believes, look at what they did over the weekend against UCLA. They'll do everything they possibly can. Every play, every formation that like your grandparents drew up back in the day. Kenny Dillingham probably has some old reel going on that right now. But talking about Oregon, we have to talk about Bo Nix, Heisman candidate. Again, as a Heisman voter, he's easily on my list. He's been balling. I mean, last couple of games, he just keeps throwing touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. His completion percentage is at a record pace. Look out for him in this game. And then their defense. Look what they did to USC. I get we could light up SC's defense all day long, and I know a lot of people definitely on YouTube do that. But let's talk about this SC offense against this Oregon defense. And to really win and be a CFP team, you got to play defense. You got to win up front. What they did against Caleb Williams. I mean, he struggled. 56% completion percentage. His season low. 291 passing yards. I mean, this team struggled. They were in the backfield all game long. So I think Oregon handles business against Arizona State, but this is not going to be a walk because it never is. This point in the season, I think they strengthened their case as the strongest one-loss team. And finally, when Ohio State and Michigan play and somebody gets bounced from that, we need to have a conversation if Oregon is in the champ game against UW, about 2 teams from this league. We need to have a realistic conversation because they're having that in the South. They're having that with Alabama and Georgia. Let's have it right here. I'll be sure to bring you all those details over the course of the next couple weeks. I also want to talk about Arizona. Arizona climbs a bunch of spots under Jedd Fisch. They play Utah. This is a ranked game. And to me, this is one of the hottest games in the country. Can't wait to get down there. Myself, Ted Robinson, our entire crew will be there. Cannot wait to get to Tucson. It will be sold out. The place will be bonkers. Make sure you come find us and come say hello because I can't wait to watch this one go down. But for Arizona, let's just talk about where they sit because I was a little frustrated, and I'd imagine Wildcat fans are as well tonight because Iowa, the team that let go of their offensive coordinator a couple weeks ago, Iowa is ranked higher than them. And I struggle with that because Iowa got drilled by Penn State, who's had no offense, gave them 31 points. Who's Arizona got drilled by? Oh, yeah, nobody. Because as I said earlier, all their combined losses don't even tally up to 31 points. Overtime, Mississippi State, 1-score game against UW, where I think their season turned in that game. Multiple overtimes, USC. I mean, this team just beat 3 ranked teams, and I was there over the weekend against Colorado in one of the coolest atmospheres I've seen in a long time, and it was a scene in Boulder. It was an absolute vibe, and they come down a 6.5-minute drive to win that game. But back to my Iowa point, because I'd be so curious what the debate was like in the room. Let's just do the comparison game, because that's exactly what Boo Corrigan talked about. You do start getting more data points, and one of them is common opponents, and you do start to compare. I went down there. Ashley's done it as well, but you go down to Dallas and they take you through this mock selection committee and they give you this binder and you start comping. Like, how would you rank teams? Where would you rank teams? I don't really understand this one by any stretch when you look at the comparison. Let's look at it a little bit. Iowa beats Michigan State by 10. Washington destroys Michigan State on the road. Arizona loses by a score to Michigan. Not that hard. Let's go down the road again. Iowa scores 15 in a football game against Wisconsin in a win. Congrats. Nice win. Competitive game. Arizona plays Washington State, who, oh, by the way, we all saw them beat Wisconsin in September. They put 44 on Washington State. So if you're going to start to do the comparison game, let's actually do it. I mean, Iowa, they've only scored over 20 points in 2 conference games. They've never scored more than 26 points in a Big Ten game. Well, what are we talking about? We're one of the hottest teams in America. Noah Fifita has totally come on strong. He basically wins Freshman of the Week every single time he straps it up and plays. Tetero McMillan, I put him on my semifinal list for the Blitnikoff Award as a voter earlier this week, along with Troy Franklin, along with Roma Dunze, along with Jalen Polk. There's a lot of talented playmakers out here, but definitely a bunch in Tucson. So I just kind of want to net out with that. I didn't really understand what the committee thought when they put Iowa higher than Arizona. And I think when you think of those data points and even take out the emotion of it, you say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if you listen to the most tenured coach in this league, one of the most tenured in the country, Kyle Whittingham, he says analytics would tell you that offense is 50% of wins, defense is 35%, and special teams is the final 15%. So if that's the case, you're on with one of the hottest offenses in America all day long versus a team that has clearly struggled offensively, played a couple quarterbacks this year. I just don't think that one's close. Of course, if Arizona gets this one, they'll keep climbing. So let's talk about climbing, because I know everybody wants to know about the Pac-12 title game. As I referenced earlier, Washington wins, they're in. They also can get in before they even play if Utah is able to beat Arizona. So UW fans, keep your fingers all over those Google flights and all those alerts, okay? Keep it right here on YouTube. Check all that out. All right, with that said, Oregon, we know what they have to do. They got a chance to get this thing. Everything is kind of in their favor. They go to Vegas with a win and a UW win over Oregon State and a Utah win over Arizona. So it's not as easy as you think. To our Wildcat fans, look, there's a scenario where you go to Vegas, and we'll talk about it late in the game, but it's a little convoluted. Bottom line, you got to win to stay in the dialogue, and you got to win out. And then, of course, you'll need a little help. The Beavs, same deal. You got to just go win, handle business, that we can get into that, because you're going to have to win out. But bottom line, and again, this speaks to the strength of the conference, which is frustrating. Why? Are you kidding me? The ACC? Really? I mean, I'll go back to the Louisville deal. And that one blew my mind as well. I mean, and I'm a big fan of what Louisville has done, but how are they ranked higher than Oregon State? How are they ranked? They lost to my Pitt Panthers, who I love. You see the helmet back there? I love the Pitt Panthers, but it's a tough year in Pittsburgh. We only got 2 wins. Louisville's won. The other one's Wofford, who only has 1 win. Who won this weekend over the Citadel? So I'm just saying, committee, the ACC thing just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. With that said, make sure you lock into this week's games on this part of the country. Okay, we've got some fun games. We've got rivalry games. Cal Stanford at the big game. Roxy Bernstein, I know he's fired up for that one. We got USC, UCLA here in LA. A lot of drama around that one. See how that thing shakes out. And I know if you're a Bama fan, you don't got to watch this weekend. Check out a team out west, because you're playing Chattanooga. Basically a bye week. Congratulations. You've been doing it for a long time. If you're Ole Miss, you're kind of wondering, hey, what's going on with our team? Don't worry about it. You play University of Louisiana Monroe. You ain't got to worry about it. Watch these teams out west. Watch Oregon. We saw Knox Kiffin on social media taking an unofficial and hanging out with Dan Lanning over the weekend. So watch these games out west. It's kind of an off week for the majority of the SEC. And for the committee, I'm really curious to see how you comp these teams that are really close to one another. So with that said, as all my kids are coming into this live YouTube show right now, hit me with any of your comments. And it's Tuesday, CFP week. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Ashley Adamson comes on back as well.